The establishment Democrats, they never send mean tweets. They don't openly threaten world leaders, on Twitter at least. And they never cause an insurrection on the Capitol. Do you believe that Donald Trump is a major threat to our democracy?
I well, okay. So first of all, I'm glad you said on Twitter because like I said, the establishment Democrat in my previous answer, the establishment Democrats have uh, started a variety of new wars, and they have threatened countries. They want to go to war with other countries. They threaten in so many ways world leaders. They actively push, they're war hawks essentially. They're constantly pushing for more war, more escalation. I don't believe Trump is any more of a threat to democracy than any of the past presidents, well, in the last several decades before him, or even Joe Biden now. I mean, one of the first things Joe Biden did as president was actually bomb Syria, which is something Donald Trump did as well. But that doesn't make it better or right that they both are awful. Anyway, let's see. I would say that Trump isn't the problem. This is kind of a famous saying, but I kind of believe it wholeheartedly that Donald Trump isn't necessarily the problem. He's a symptom of the problem, and the core of the problem, the actual problem, um, is the neoliberal policies that allow somebody like Donald Trump to become elected in the first place. Don't forget, the most popular president we've ever had, or at least top like 3 to 5 or something, and he usually makes number one is FDR. FDR, a populist left progressive, and he's not perfect. FDR has some significant issues, but on economics and some many social issues, but some not. He was incredibly populist left. He actually fought for progressive left policies and implemented many of them, like the New Deal, that benefited the country and the American people in significant ways. But the Republicans knew that they would never win an election again from people like FDR if they didn't invent something like term limits. So the establishment Democrats, because they're so awful in their neoliberal policies, they effectively allowed Republicans to beat them out in what we see this throughout modern history, where it's like every other election or two, the oppositional party takes over. But during the FDR days, when you're actually fighting for populist left progressive policies and you were benefiting the American people with them, you didn't see that. You had a long-term one-sided policies and power for one side. It wasn't until the neoliberal policies started crushing the American people that the Republicans were so easily able to take over after every neoliberal Democrat.
Absolutely.
So I think the problem comes with those neoliberal policies, because the neoliberal policies make they leave the American people so desperate, and they crush the American people so much. The American people are so badly disenfranchised that they will, in fact, turn to somebody like George W. Bush or Donald Trump in the first place.
Absolutely.
So here, I guess, is Trump a threat to our democracy? Like I said, not any more or less than the past presidents. Look, it just came up a little bit ago, but Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and the Democratic establishment as a whole literally rigged an election in what is supposed to be a democratic republic. Now, that was before Trump was president, and even before then, the establishment Democrats and the establishment Republicans, the status quo, eroded away our democracy a long time ago. There was a literal Princeton study that looked over 20 years of policy, and it found that we no longer policy implemented, and it found we no longer actually live in a democracy. We live in an oligarchy where the policies implemented were perfectly in line with the corporate donors of the politicians who were implementing those policies, and they were directly opposed to the needs and wants of the American people. So we haven't had a democracy for quite a long time already. To say that Donald Trump is the ultimate threat to democracy is a fallacy position. It's not accurate to reality.
Yeah, definitely. And something I would like to point out is Donald Trump's policies isn't much different than the Republicans. His policies on border, on war, on taxes are all the same as every single Republican.
Yeah.
And his policies on foreign policy, especially, is no different than any Democrat. So
that's not wrong. His policies with that's why. So you bring up the Twitter and you bring up like this. Is Trump a threat to democracy? Well, no. I mean, he's not great for it. He's eroding it away as the systemic problems that we've always had do whenever the Trump types are in office. But Trump, the thing with Trump is the rest of the establishment, even the neoliberal Democrats, they never call out Trump on policy. The only problem they ever have with him is on civility and decorum, like you said, on Twitter and stuff of that nature. So it's never actually substantive problems that they have with Trump, because on all of those disgusting policies, they agree. Like you said, the Republicans and Donald Trump are perfectly aligned on policy, but the neoliberal Democrats are nearly aligned with Trump on policy as well, at least on economic and foreign policy. They are very closely related, or on some issues, they're not even different at all. Like you said, on foreign policy, Donald Trump bombed Syria without congressional approval. But I mean, Joe Biden is one of the first things he did in office. Look at the conflict between Israel and Palestine. I don't think there's any difference between Donald Trump and the establishment Democrats. I mean, Obama gave billions of dollars in aid. We gave them Iron Dome. We gave them military aid, as well, military resources. We gave them all of these different things, and then we look a blind eye when they commit atrocities. They're an apartheid state and they do war crimes.
Absolutely.
So and Donald Trump to Joe Biden to Barack Obama to even George W. Bush had like one or two moments where he wasn't even as bad as some of the not that he's good. They're all awful. They're all terrible on this issue. My point is they're basically aligned on policy when it comes, like you said, foreign policy or even just economic policy. They, like I said, the offshore trade agreements. Yeah, and Donald Trump. Let me be clear here. Donald Trump said that he would stop the offshore trade agreements.
You haven't done it in 30 years or 26 years.
Well, I've been a senator,
You haven't done it.
And I have been a secretary of state, and I have
Your husband signed NAFTA, which was one of the worst things that ever happened to the manufacturing industry.
That is your opinion.
You go to New England, you go to Ohio, Pennsylvania, you go anywhere you want, Secretary Clinton, and you will see devastation where manufacturing is down 30, 40, sometimes 50%. NAFTA is the worst trade deal maybe ever signed anywhere, but certainly ever signed in this country. And now you want to approve Trans-Pacific Partnership. You were totally in favor of it. Then you heard what I was saying, how bad it is, and you said, I can't win that debate. But you know that if you did win, you would approve that, and that will be almost as bad as NAFTA. Nothing will ever top NAFTA.
He campaigned on a lot of these things. The reason I call him a fake populist is because he didn't really deliver on any of those left-wing things that he actually promised during his 2016 campaign. He stopped the TPP, but then he implemented his own version of the TPP, which was just as bad as the TPP was. So And in his first year in office or so, he shipped like 95,000 jobs overseas. I'd have to double check that number, but I think that's around, like, he shipped tens of thousands of jobs overseas in his first year in office. So on the offshore trade agreements and shipping jobs overseas, he's not really any better. But my point isn't that Trump is good. My point is that the neoliberal Democrats are just as bad as Trump or in worse in some ways, in the sense that without them, Trump never would have become elected in the first place.
Absolutely. And what you said is a perfect segue to my next point, talking about decorum. But before I go to that point, I want to say that, in my opinion, the president that was the biggest threat to our civil liberty and democracy was actually Obama, because Barack Obama, the NDAA of 2011, National Defense Authorization Act, there was a provision in the bill that said,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, it says that the government is allowed to throw anyone in prison without trial or charge indefinitely.
Yeah, they can infinitely detain any. Oh, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. There's a little bit of a lag on my end, so sorry about that. Go ahead.
In the ACLU, so that's the biggest blight on his legacy. And the thing is that people got upset rightfully when Trump threw people in jail. I think it happened in Oregon without trial or charge, but it was because Obama made it legal by signing it into law.
Yes, no, the National Defense Authorization Act that he signed allows the government to detain any U.S. citizen without fair trial or due process indefinitely. It's a heavily unconstitutional law. The fact that he supported that was one of the first big moments where I was like, not like where I reckon I already knew at that point that Obama was pretty terrible, but I was like, wow, that's like real bad. That's like core constitutional law, like rejection law. Like it was like that and the TPP. There were like a few big ones where I was like, okay, so the National Defense Authorization Act basically gets rid of due process, and the TPP effectively eradicates U.S. sovereignty. And Obama did torture. Obama, killed U.S. citizens abroad without fair trial or due process. Obama did all of these terrible, unconstitutional atrocities, and the liberals that support neoliberals, they just go to sleep. They go to brunch whenever their side is doing something awful, and then they only wake up for when the opposition, Trump and the Republicans, are doing the same things that they were cheering under, or not criticizing Obama for, or any of the other neoliberal Democrats during their time in office. I also wanted to elaborate a little bit on the 2016 rigged election. I actually wrote an article about this not long after it happened, and this was even before Donna Brazile, as you mentioned, or I don't know if you said this or not, but she actually wrote a book, and she too admitted that that they had rigged the Democratic primary against the most popular politician in the entire country, according to Bernie Sanders was polled to be the most popular politician in the entire country during the 2016 primary, after the 2016 election, before the in between, and I guess before the 2020 primary election, and during the 2020 primary election. So like from 2016 all the way up till recent, every poll that's come out has shown Bernie Sanders to be the most popular politician in the entire country. Bernie Sanders would have beat Donald Trump according to literally every single poll. I remember there was one poll up that had him up by like 20 points. He was always up by double digits, as where Hillary Clinton was generally within single digits of Trump. Sometimes she was behind, sometimes she was ahead, sometimes she was only ahead by the the room for statistical error within a poll. So she might have been ahead by like 3 points, but like the statistical room for error was like 3 points. And so it was there was red flags all over the place for her. And then they actively, Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and the Democratic establishment as a whole, actively rigged the Democratic primary. Not only did they do that, and stopping the person who could have actually beaten Trump, they actively elevated Trump with the Pied Piper strategy. So what they did is in the Republican primary, they did everything they could to make Donald Trump the nominee because they thought he would be the easier candidate to beat in 2016. So when I say not only are they responsible for Trump because of their neoliberal policies, they're actively like not even involuntarily responsible for Trump. They are actively responsible for Trump in the sense that they basically campaigned for him in the Republican primary and helped him to claim the Republican nomination. And then they rigged the primary against the person who could beat him. And then they put up their own candidate who got annihilated because, and people say, oh, she won the popular vote. Well, first of all, we live in a country with the Electoral College. The popular vote in the general election is not that, it's not like it snuck up on you and you're like, oh shit, wait a minute. Is that it? Wait, are you telling me that there's this, what's this Electoral College? I've never heard of this before. It's not like we've been using it for decades, like since the beginning of presidential elections. It's not anything new. She knew what she was getting into. She knew there would be this this Electoral College going into the general election, and she did nothing to try and accommodate for that type of election. The whole party, it's like they want to lose. Yeah. And to some degree, they don't mind losing. As long as they lose to Donald Trump and they don't win with Bernie Sanders, to them that probably is a win. And that's a problem. And I suggest people, I recommend people go and read my article on Bernie Sanders would have won, but the Democratic primary was rigged. I'll post this video up on my YouTube as well, and I'll put a link to that below so people can check that out if they want. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that little tangent. You can continue on your next question. I just wanted to I wanted to explain why else beyond just the neoliberal policies, why Trump is the responsibility of those neoliberal Democrats. But yeah, and that is another reason why.